Hello and welcome to the latest Autovista Group Insights video. I'm Phil Curry, Daily News Brief Editor.
I'm Tom Giggis, journalist for the Daily Brief.
And I'm Neil King, senior data journalist.
And we're recording this today via video conferencing due to the social distancing measures taking place under the COVID-19 coronavirus guidelines. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The purpose of the Insight videos is to focus on one topic that has been dominating the automotive industry for the past month. And there's no bigger topic at the moment, unfortunately, than COVID-19. But we are going to be looking at some of the positives that are coming out of the situation as the automotive market starts to look to the future rather than the past. With this in mind, factories are starting to reopen, markets are starting to plan about what they can do in the future, but more importantly, there is a future for the automotive industry in Europe. So I'd like to start by asking you, Tom, what factories currently are looking to reopen?
Yes, right, Phil. So you have seen quite a few reopenings recently. You had VW's plant in Zwickau in Germany. That recently opened 23rd of April. Of course, that's also running on reduced capacity and reduced recycle times as well. The Chemnitz engine plant's also come back online, and the Chattanooga in the US is looking to recall workers on the 3rd of May with some limited production the day after. SIA came back on the 27th of April at the Mortel plant in Barcelona. You also had, checking my notes, you also had JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, on the 18th of May. They plan to reopen their Solihull plants at the UK in Birmingham. They obviously manufacture the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport there. There's their Slovakia plant that's looking to reopen as well, which produces the Defender, and their Austria plant. Renault on the 28th of April, reopening with about 25 to 30% of its staff operating at capacity. They produce the electric Zoe and the Nissan Micra. This will actually be the first EU factory after it closed in mid-March, with others we're looking to resume around May. So we've also got their 3 component plants which resumed, the Le Mans plant which produces chassis components, and the reconditioning spare parts plant which is Choisy-le-Roux. We've also got Nissan, which of course reopened quite recently this week in late April. Their Sunderland plant, which they're looking to reopen to about 50 staff members who work on the powertrain line.
We're opening up at the moment, but there are still social distancing measures, I should say, in place. What are factories, what are car makers looking to do to ensure staff can remain safe?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, there's a lot of social distancing going on, where manufacturers can keep workers kind of responsibly distanced from each other. That's obviously going to be hugely important in the coming days, weeks, months, hopefully not too much longer than that, but only time will tell. There's also going to be plenty of repetitive disinfection to make sure all the surfaces are clean. Some plants you're seeing the closing of canteens, others are keeping them open, but again with much more increased social distancing measures. So workers might be sitting next to each other, or certainly not next to anyone they're normally in contact with. I believe the Nissan plant, who was just checking my notes, they're actually going to provide specialised masks for those people who do come into contact with each other. And then for those who don't, who might be able to work more isolated during the day, they're just going to give a normal face mask too. So you're also seeing some kind of specialisation and some kind of role-related adaptation as far as preventative measures go.
There's definitely been a halt in production. We can't deny that, but we've got a lot of car makers this year who are looking to launch new models. How is downtime going to affect that?
Well, you're absolutely right. Of course, production is halted across Europe and most of the world, particularly in China when it did shut down, and that was enormously disruptive. For those manufacturers who were looking to launch models this year, it's even more impactful. For example, you have VW, which opening its German plant. This is where the ID.3 is produced, which is a hugely important car for them to get out onto the road and to finally be releasing. You had Thomas Ulbrich, who's VW brand's board member for e-mobility. He called the current situation very challenging, but he really pointed to e-mobility as something of a top priority. Health, he said, health does take precedent over speed, but they're also looking to kind of focus not so much on the number of cars built, but to make sure that e-mobility is getting back on track. And that's really going to focus up on how Volkswagen views the ID.3. It's the mass market e-car, the electric car, that more of us are going to hopefully have access to when they start rolling off the lines. So it's really a top priority car for them to get out there.
And now, I suppose that brings us to my next question, and thanks, Tom. To you now, Neil. We've got these cars that are going to be rolling off production lines, all shiny and new. How are they going to be sold? How are sales resuming in Europe at the moment? Are they resuming?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fair point, Phil. I think the priority or the focus really here, and the best news that's been coming out of the industry is coming from Germany. Most of our listeners and viewers are probably aware that German dealerships were allowed to reopen as of the 20th of April. Now, that's let's say a federal government decree, and so the actual decision making is made at a lender or a state level, so the timings may differ. German dealerships have been allowed to open to a certain extent in terms of maintaining servicing and repair offers, but they're now allowed to reopen for sales. So I think that's certainly the best news, and obviously Germany is a massive market and clearly crucial for new models such as the ID.3. I'd say, just on a side point, Austria was actually slightly ahead, and we're already seeing some positive signs, not just from new dealerships, but also on the used side. There's already increased dealer activity just from a week of the 13th to the 19th of April, which is obviously our latest data point. Germany obviously will be expected to follow suit. As for the other markets, it really depends on when governments decide to relax the lockdown rules. I know there are tentative discussions in Spain, I believe, to reopen businesses about the 11th of May. It's not clear yet as to obviously whether dealerships will be included in that, but hopefully we are past the worst of this, and as you say, on a more positive note, we're actually talking about resumption of production and sales as opposed to the negativity surrounding all the lockdowns.
That's exactly. I know that sales in Europe at the moment reporting have been about 55% down in new cars.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will start to increase again as lockdown eases. And I'm not going to say completely goes, because there's still going to be elements of this going on for quite some time, unfortunately, but necessarily. Yeah. How about used car sales? How are they acting at the moment?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of elements there. As you say, across Europe, new car sales or new car registrations, more to the point, were down 55%, not surprisingly, because not just dealerships, but also registration centres have been closed. So apart from limited deliveries of cars ordered online and so on, very little activity has happened. But on the used car front, it has proven a little bit more resilient. I'll give you just a couple of examples. So, Italy, as we all know, has been hardest hit by this. So, the new car market contracted by 85% in March, whereas on the used car market, used car transactions, changes of ownership, were only down about 62%. So, that it's proving a little bit more resilient. But obviously in these times, the numbers they're not nonsensical, but it all depends really on how much activity can proceed. Just to add to that, there were similar messages coming out of France where used car demand or used car transactions were down 34% in March, compared to a 72% decline in new car demand.
And what impact? So we should really talk about residual values as well. What impact is all of this having on RVs?
Well, actually, they've been pretty resilient. Our latest data point suggests that, even in Italy, for example, one of the hardest hit markets, that, indexed compared to the start of February, residual values overall were only down about 1.6%. So, obviously on the price of a car, that's not, that's only 60, about maybe, 160 euros on a 10,000 euro car. So it's not significant. But I think the point you have to make here is, of course, that used cars fundamentally or largely can't be bought. So, even if you were to reduce prices, it's a bit of an exercise in futility because nobody can buy them. So I think that although residual values are appearing to be resilient, there is a cautionary tale there. But not surprisingly, many dealers are closed, even if they are open. As I say, there's a question mark as to what is the point of actually adjusting prices anyway, given the current lockdowns.
And with that, that's the end of our talk. I'd like to thank Tom and Neil for joining me.
Not at all.
No, you're most welcome.
And don't forget that you can subscribe to the Autovista Group Daily News Brief and follow us on social media. Now, hopefully we'll be talking again next month, and hopefully we'll be talking about something other than coronavirus. Fingers crossed that there will be another topic for the automotive industry to tackle in the next few weeks. But until then, stay safe.